Do you think you know what hunger is? That people just become weaker and quieter? You are mistaken. True hunger turns people into animals. 70 AD. Jerusalem is under siege. Roman legions have surrounded the city, blocked the roads, and cut off reinforcements. Inside, tens of thousands of people are without food or hope. At first, people tried to share what little they had left. But supplies dwindled faster than hope. And then rumors began to spread about acts that no one would have even glanced at in peacetime. Josephus, a historian and eyewitness, writes that one woman, in desperation, boiled her own child. Yes, you heard right. This is not a legend, it is his record in the chronicles. Imagine, a city without a crumb of bread, and suddenly the smell of boiled meat wafts through the window. Neighbors gather around the house. They look into the cauldron and see something that is difficult to even describe, her own child. Some jump back with a scream. But there were also those who agreed to take a piece. Because hunger does things to people that you don't even want to imagine. Rumors spread throughout the city that parents were trading their children, today it's yours, tomorrow it's mine. So as not to raise a hand against their own. Josephus wrote that at that moment, the very word humanity lost its meaning. There was no law, no morality, no shame left in the city. Hunger became the only judge. Imagine a city cut off from the world. Jerusalem, 70 AD. Inside, tens of thousands of people. Outside, Roman legions just waiting for you to die of hunger. Bread was the first to disappear. Its price became higher than gold. Then dogs, cats, and birds disappeared. People ate everything they could chew. They boiled belts. They boiled their own sandals to make a bitter soup. And now, a scene that sends a chill down your spine. Mothers even checked their own waste in search of undigested grains. They were ready to look for food where, under normal circumstances, it would be impossible to even imagine. The streets were empty markets. People sold even empty sacks, believing that, maybe something was left in the seam. Queues stood in front of nothing. Coins lost their meaning. The only currency was a piece of food, even the most disgusting. And then gangs appeared. Armed, hungry mobs. They broke into houses and searched everything, pockets, shelves, cribs. Josephus writes, they forced people to open their mouths to check if they were chewing a hidden piece of bread. If they found a crumb, they beat them to death and took it away. Imagine, you are trying to swallow a piece of bread you have left, and suddenly a crowd rips it out of your teeth. This was everyday life. People fought even for dry crusts. Mothers hid food from their own children, for later. But then, later, came today. And when rumors spread throughout the city about that woman's cauldron, it became a symbol of falling lower than animals. People were afraid not so much of death as of what they themselves were becoming. But the tragedy of Jerusalem is no exception. History proves that when famine grips a city, it always leads to the same consequences. What happened here has been repeated over and over again, in other cities, in different eras, among different peoples. Do you think this only happened in Jerusalem? No. When famine came, it always pushed people to the same limits. Constantinople. During the siege, the chronicler left only one sentence. They began to eat their dead. No details. What else could be written? And this silence speaks louder than any description. Egypt, the time of the Great Famine. Scribes recorded that parents gave their children in exchange for bread. Not gold. Not jewelry. Their own children. One author even wrote, parents looked at their sons not as children, but as food. And now, medieval Europe. Chroniclers testified that during the Great Famine, people dug up fresh graves. The dead found no peace, they were torn from the ground so that the living could survive. Argos. Women left their babies on the roads, hoping that someone would take them in. But those who were not taken in faced a terrible fate. The streets, littered with small bodies, spoke louder than any words. In other cities, when supplies ran out completely, people drank the blood of livestock. And then, step by step, they crossed the line of what had seemed impossible just yesterday. Flags changed, languages changed, but the question always remained the same. How many days can humanity survive when food disappears? And the answer was always the same, very few. Because a siege is not just a war between armies. It is an experiment on human nature that shows how quickly the line between the possible and the impossible can be blurred. A siege is not just a war between armies. It is an experiment on human nature. A sword kills quickly. Hunger kills slowly. It erases all boundaries. The boundary between mine and ours. The boundary between allowed and forbidden. The boundary between man and beast. Imagine, hundreds died in arenas. Thousands in battles. But even there were rules. In gladiatorial combat, you couldn't kill without a signal. In war, there was captivity, there were negotiations. But during a siege, there were no rules at all. There is only one law, the law of hunger. Chronicles wrote. When bread disappears, laws disappear. When water runs out, compassion disappears. When hope disappears, shame disappears. Imagine a city where the neighbor with whom you shared a table yesterday now looks at your child not as a human being, but as a means of survival. Imagine that you yourself begin to think the same way. That is what a siege does. It does not just destroy walls. It destroys the very idea of rules. Where order ends, fear begins. And we have already seen the most terrible confirmation of this. Let us return to Jerusalem, to the moment when despair crossed the final line. Josephus wrote that even Roman legionaries, hardened by death in the arena, were shocked by what they heard about that woman's cauldron. Because this was no longer a war for a city. It was a defeat of humanity. Now imagine a modern city. The lights go out. The water disappears. The shops are empty. How many days will order prevail? How many nights will trust survive? History gives a cruel answer, less than we want to believe. In war, bodies die. In siege, souls die.